Well, here we are, folks. The Battle of Ulsan, August 14th, 1904. Just getting ready to have this little battle. I took the liberties here of writing down the names of the ships on paper. I never had a naval battle report before, so I figured this might help viewers to know what ship is what during the course of the game. And I won't keep them up all the time, but like for right now, it's probably pretty useful. North is with the giant dice. Just behind the Japanese Iwata ship up there, you can see. So that's the north side. Anyway, we have the Russians on the left. I have their names written in red. Their flagship is the Rosia, and it's leading the squadron. Followed the Gromoboi. He comes up second, international ship. And then that's brought up behind by the Rurik. That brings up the rear, is what I'm trying to say. So those are the three Russian ships in the squadron. For the Japanese, we have the Idzuma, and that's their flagship. And they're followed by the Adzuma, and the Tokiwa, and the Iwata brings up the rear. And again, that's north, right behind the Iwata, marked by the big dice. Basically, what's going on here is both squadrons are patrolling the waters outside of Port Arthur. The Japanese are out to destroy anybody they encounter, the enemy that they encounter, the Russians. And that's what's about to happen here. The Russians, on the other hand, they're patrolling and they're on orders to assist any friendly Russian ships from the Port Arthur squadron if they might encounter any. So the Japanese seem to be the more aggressive one here, and you can see how they're moving in a direction that just puts them right in that path of the Russians. It's clear. Sunny day, it's early mornings, 05:20, I believe. It starts, so it's like 20 after 5 in the morning. So it's clear weather, daybreak. And this is what happens. Okay, so that's the situation. I'm going to get into the victory conditions next and how the game will proceed from there. So let's take a little close-up here so you can see the ships on their way. I would say, as a little background on the ships themselves, I would say the Japanese probably have the better, more complete armored ships. These are all armored cruisers, by the way. They're not your big dreadnought ships. But I think the Japanese have better coverage armor-wise. But I think, on some of the ships anyway, the Russians have better armor. Gun-wise, I think the Russians might actually have a slight advantage. With bigger guns and better range on these weapons. Torpedoes, the Japanese definitely have an advantage. The Russians, they don't have as many torpedoes. They're very short-ranged, short-lived things for the Russians. So I don't know how that's going to work out in the game, but we'll see. Okay, they're on the way to clashing, and let's see what happens, hey, folks. We're about to jump into turn 1. It'll be 0520, dawn, basically. The game will be starting. I just wanted to cover a few things before we get into it. And the first thing is probably the sequence of play, just so you can kind of follow along if you don't know already. Basically, everything in Fleet Admiral is simultaneous, which harkens back to the older days of rules, and it's really enjoyable. I love it. It starts off with an orders phase. All the players involved write orders for all their ships they control. Movement orders, changing of heading, weapon systems that will fire and what those targets will be, etc. You write all that down for the ships you control. Once that's done, we follow a little sequence of resolving all these orders. And the first thing is movement. We go to a movement phase, and that's where all the ships do their ordered movements. Once that's carried out, we go into a combat phase where everything that was ordered to fire with their ship's weapons can do so at the targets that they chose in their orders. So that's resolved. After combat, we go into a detection phase. Now, this is an important part of the game because you can't attack a ship that you have not yet detected. So you have to have a detection phase. And this allows you to actually detect enemy ships. And once they're detected during the turn, you're allowed to what's called reactive fire on those detected ships, if you choose. Now, this isn't normally something you put in your orders, and it allows you to actually specifically target and reaction fire against just detected ships. So that's what the reaction fire phase is, which follows the detection phase. It allows you to do that. However, it is pretty ineffective. I think the number of barrels the ship fires with is halved, so you get the idea. It's not as effective. Once that's resolved, the reactive fire phase, we go into the final phase of the turn, and that's damage control. Basically, you try and put out fires, stop flooding, major damage. You try and take care of that for your ships. So that's the sequence. Once you do that, 3 minutes of time goes by, and you go to the next turn, and repeat. Another thing about turns is that each turn is 3 minutes, and movement and combat reflects that quite accurately in these rules. Normally in the game, and I normally play this way, you use a scale of 1 inch or centimeter. You can use centimeters. I like to use inches. 1 inch equals 1K yard, or 1,000 yards. That's the normal scale for the rules. And it works fine. I play normally on a 6x4 table, and it's perfect, actually. It could be a little bit bigger, my table space, but it's fine. I like to use 1 inch equals 1,000 yards, the standard scale. But the rules do take into account other scales that you might want to play at. Considering your period you're playing or the allowable table space you have, you might want to change the scale from the normal 1 inch equals 1,000 yards. In my case, I'm going to be using 1 inch equals 500 yards. And the main reason for that is so the movements and the targeting will be a little bit more pronounced for the video's sake. For instance, in this scale, 1 inch equals 500, you can expect ships to move about 3 or 4 inches in a turn. Weapon ranges you could expect would be about maybe 24 inches at the furthest. Normally about 12, and the shorter ranges where your real deadly would be closer than that, like 6 inches. It's pretty deadly stuff. And your torpedoes will kick into gear at those ranges. So that'll give you an idea of what to expect. So if need be during the battle, I might have to shift my ships over a little bit, to keep everything on the table, because, it's a mobile battle. Ships are going to move where they want to move. So yeah. Another thing is victory conditions, and we're going to be pretty loose with that. It's pretty much by the end of the battle, if you've done more damage to the enemy ships or sunk enemy ships, you're going to be the winner. So the Japanese, if they can take out about damage or sink 2 of the Russian ships, that's pretty major. Otherwise, only 1 might be a draw. If the Russians can heavily damage or sink 1 Japanese ship, that would be a draw. 2 of them, now they're winning. It depends on what the Japanese do in return. So we're going to be a little bit fluid with the victory conditions. We'll see what happens. So yeah, we're going to go right into turn 1 and start by writing our orders. Okay, folks, get ready. It's about to begin. Folks, here we are. We're 2 turns into the battle, which makes it 05:23. Just completed. So pretty uneventful there. Both squadrons are firing away at each other. Totally ineffective. There's been no hits recorded on either side. Just a lot of shooting and moving forward. Russians are keeping their course. They're moving at, I think it's 14 knots, I think. The Japanese are up to 16 knots. Going a little bit fast there. I guess they're trying to close in and get to that front of the Russians there, cross their T or whatever. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. So one thing to keep in note is these splash markers that I have on the table, the little circular splash markers. Each one represents a ship that's firing on them. So if you take a look at the Russians there, you'll see the Rozia has two splash markers on it, which basically means it's being shot at by 2 different Japanese ships. In this case, I think it's the Inzuma and the Adzuma. The 2 lead Japanese ships are firing on that single ship. So we got a little over-concentration fire going on. Just so you know what the splash markers represent, they are useful in a game. I think only the Iwata, Japanese ship bringing up the rear, hasn't actually taken any fire yet. We're still at relatively long and extreme ranges. I think only the Izuma and Rosea are actually in medium range for some of their guns. So we'll see. It's probably going to get bloody pretty fast in the next couple turns, folks. Okay, see you. Hey, folks, another 2 turns gone by. It's, let's see, since the start of the battle, it's been about 12 minutes of actual action going on in scale. The time is 0529. And so far, both fleets pretty much have increased the speed of their ships. I think the Japanese are at 19 knots. Me, I'm playing the Russians. I've got my line going at about 17. I'd have to double check. But I think the Japanese are catching up. They're getting ahead of me. And that's not what I want. I want to keep the distance and try and whittle them down a little bit with my guns and avoid those torpedoes. Just for scale there, I got the dice laying out so you can see. But the Japanese, their torpedoes have, I think, a maximum range of a little over 6 inches, 6.5, something like that. And if they get in too close, I could see them launching them. So it didn't happen yet, but it's next couple turns I might see that happening. So I'm getting kind of a little bit afraid of that. I changed the course of the Russians a little toward the south, trying to avoid the Japanese. But the Japanese, they're turning as well, so we'll see what happens. The only damage so far, we finally got some hits going on, and that was the 2 lead ships of both comms are about medium range now. Everything else is still about long range, for the big guns anyway. And the Izuma, Japanese lead ship, the flagship, and the Rosea, for the Russians, their flagship, their lead ship, they managed to do the most hits. Well, the Rosea did actually get some minor structural damage on the Izuma, and the Gromoboi, the second ship in the Russian line, that managed to get a compartment waterline hit on the Adzuma, the second ship in the Japanese line. But the Japanese quickly contained that, so there was no flooding. And that's about it so far. I think only the Iwata, the one in the back in the Japanese line, is the only ship that hasn't been fired on yet. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's the situation, my friends. We got another couple turns to go by, and we'll see a lot more drastic action, I think, because they're getting close now. Okay, folks. Okay, folks, it's now turn 0535. So I think that's 3 turns that went by. It's starting to heat up. It's getting pretty nasty right now. No torpedoes, which is surprising. I thought in the last turn we might see some hits coming in at me in this turn, but nope, nothing come in. I could see that the Japanese are pretty much close enough to start launching them, though. So we'll see in the next turn or two if there's any torps coming. And how devastating they can be. Well, let's see. The lead ships are taking some deadly shots at each other. We had a lot of structural damage going on the Izuma, as well as the Rosea, the 2 flagships. In fact, the Izuma is taking quite a bit of structural damage. I think they're at 5, and they can take 6 before it starts to have effects on them. And again, we're talking about the minor hits on equipment and superstructure. I think that's the Dowd effect rules in the optional section of the rules. So yeah, we're using that. So yeah, the Izuma, the lead Japanese ship, has taken 5 out of 6 before it starts to have ill effect on the ship itself. What else happened? The Izuma also lost its hoist on its main battery to the 4, so it's down 1 main battery for 3 turns. I think that'll kick back into working order on turn, 3 turns from now. So it's 0535, so go 3 up from there. What else happened? The Rurik, the ship in the back for the Russians, that's been taking quite a bit of hits as well. Structural damage, I think it took 1. It lost one of its light batteries, one of the mounts anyway, and one of its secondary battery mounts too. All on the port side. I think it took a structure hit as well. So it's getting pounded by the Iwata in the back there. And it's also on a different course from the other 2 Russian ships. I'm kind of keeping it it's a slower ship. So I've got the lead Russian ships going at, I think, 20 knots, 19 knots. We have to look here. Yeah, I got them going at 20 knots. And unfortunately, the Rurik has a max of 18 knots, and so he's going to be hanging back a little bit. I don't know what I'm going to do with him. He's going to get himself caught. I want to maybe distract the Japanese. Maybe they'll turn off against him and give my other 2 ships a chance to get ahead. I don't know. But my plan of keeping distance isn't working. I might have to really change course dramatically here and take my guns out of action. I don't know. But I got these ships going pretty fast. We're all maxed, so there's a lot of penalties to hitting. Anyway, for the Japanese, yeah, the Idzuma took some hits, lost its hoist for its main battery. The Adzama, the second ship in the Japanese line, it lost its lookout, so it's minus 6k yards to its detection. What else did it? I think it lost one of its light batteries. No major loss in this battle. And it's got some structure hits. But I think damage-wise, the Idzuma, the flagship of the Japanese, is taking the worst. And it's only basic structure hits so far. But if he takes any more, he's going to start suffering on his ability to fix major damage. I believe that's how the Dowd effect rule works. I'll have to double check that. Okay, folks, that's another 3 turns gone by. The next turn will be 0538, I believe. Yeah. All right. See you in a bit. 2 more turns gone by. That's 8 in all. I think we're in 24 minutes of simulated combat here. And up until now, there hasn't been any major damage or events going on here in the battle. I think there's a lot of poor dice rolling, to be honest with you. The range between these battle lines here is less than 2,000 yards, so we're talking about close, short ranges here between these ships. But we're about to see some devastation, I think, very shortly. Let's see what has happened so far. We do have some ships taking hull flooding. The Rozia, as you remember, the Adzuma and the Idzuma, the 2 lead ships of the Japanese line, they're concentrating their fire on the Rozia, my flagship for the Russians, and did cause some hull flooding. So there's some flooding going on there, folks. I think the Rozia also took a magazine hit, which could have caused a major explosion. Just boom, that's it, it's over. But the armor of the Rozia kept that from happening. I think it was like 6-inch secondary battery guns that actually hit the magazine. So my armor on the Rozia stopped that from happening. Let's see. There's a lot of battle smoke going on too. And if you know the rules, that's a penalty after 5 turns of combat. There's a penalty to hit. So yeah, there's a lot of smoke going on. There's also hull flooding on the Adzuma, which was from shots from the Gromoboi. That's good. Having a little success there. There's some hull flooding on the Rurik, the Russian ship bringing up the rear. And that was from shots from the Tokiwa, its secondary battery, which are 6-inch guns. So he's causing some effect on the Rurik. All in all, I think the Rurik is taking a pounding back there. I think it's got a lot of more structural damage as well. And also the Idzuma, I think it's taken 6 points of structural damage. So it's taken a lot of damage. After that, it's going to start suffering. So, yeah. And that's from hits from the Rozia. Also, the Iwata bringing up the Japanese rear. There's nobody shooting at them because I only have 3 ships in the Russian squadron here. So I'm focusing on the first 3 ships in the Japanese line. So there's really no extra guns to put on the Iwata. I don't want to split up my batteries or anything. But he's pretty much scot-free. I've been sitting back there shooting on my Rurik. And as I said, the Rurik back there's got some hull flooding. The Rurik, though, did manage to hit the Tokiwa and take out its aft battery hoist on its main battery, I should say. So that's gone for 3 turns. So the Tokiwa will not be able to use its aft battery, main battery, for 3 turns yet. What else has happened? Other than that, it's been a lot of structural damage. Like I said, the Idzuma has been taking some hits. It's got a lot of structural damage. I think it's at 6 now, so it's reached its max. After that, it's going to take some, effect on it, negative effects on its ability to control major damage. Let's see. I had other things happen, like the wireless communications have been taken out on the Idzuma. That's gone. Yeah, that's about it, really. I think the next few turns are going to tell it all. And one more thing to note, that there hasn't been any torpedo impacts yet. Oh, boy. Just to give you a sense here, once again, the Russians are pretty much outgunned regarding torpedoes, because the Japanese have a range of like 6.5 inches on their ships. And got more of them, too, I believe. Whereas the Russians, I think their ranges are like 1 inch for their torpedoes. Not good. So even looking at the battle now, I can't see using my torpedoes. If we get a little closer, maybe, but I don't think so. So I'm suspecting there might be some torpedoes impacting in the next turn or two. We'll see. All right, folks, that's the battle so far. Stay tuned. Folks, thought I'd take a little interlude here. We're at turn 0544, and just did my orders phase. I'm taking a look at the actual sheets, give you an idea how these rules work in a way. Like, here's the Rosea. It's statistics sheet, all of its ranges and its weapons and everything else. And you can see down here where it took a hull flooding hit during turn 0541. So at the end of this turn, 0544, I'm going to attempt to repair that and prevent any future flooding, and I think it's like an 80% chance. So it's likely that I'm going to be able to correct that and prevent any future flooding. And also I got some notes down here. What does this say? Fuel bunker? Destroyed. Yeah, that was the last turn. Yeah, just a little note from the damage that it took. It didn't cause any explosions or fires or anything, but it's when it happened. And up here I keep a record of the structural damage, like to the superstructure, or any hits on equipment that don't exist, or things that are already destroyed. You keep track of that, structural hits. And it's basically 3 plus your damage control capacity, which is located down here. It says 3. So 3 plus 3 is 6. So I could take as much as 6 structural hits before it starts to reduce my damage control capacity itself. So once I take 7 hits, I'm going to lose -1 on my damage control capacity. So 3 will become 2. And what that basically means is that I can control up to this number of damage areas. So if I had a hull flooding hit here, and say a waterline compartment flooding hit here as well, and let's say a magazine fire, 3 different hits going on, I can repair all 3 of them in one go, because that's my max for my damage control capacity. If I only had 2, like I'll have when I reach 6 up here, or 7 structural hits, this will be reduced to 2, I'd only be able to repair up to 2 of these instead of 3. So you can see how that can become critical. So yeah, that's how it works. And here's the orders sheet for the Rosea. This is every turn it's gone by, and the orders that his ship has had, including its course changes and heading. Right now it's at 145 degrees. Its knots, which is 14. And right here a little code that I use for my targets for my main battery, my secondary batteries, my tertiary batteries, and if there's any torpedo launches, any details go in there, as well as any other notes. So that's how it goes. You do this for all your ships. Keep track of your ships on here, and there you go. These are all my ships I'm running right now. Rurik is taking a lot of damage, as you can see. Yeah, it took a hit, hull flooding in the last turn, 0541. So I'm going to check that at the end of 0544 this turn. See if I can control that. So there it is, folks. Just a little interlude. Okay, let's get back to the game here. Let's see, we got another 2 turns done. We just concluded 0547. So that's about 10 turns gone by, I believe. Yeah, the ships are closing in. If you look in the back there, you got the Rurik and the Tokiwa kind of clashing. Almost got a collision going on there. Looks like Rurik got a little bit fancy there. Put the moves on the Tokiwa. And the Iwata bringing up the rear. Looks like he's going to try to cut around the other side of Rurik now. He's in that position to do that. Let's see. What happened? Well, we had a lot of waterline hits, a lot of waterline flooding going on, but that was pretty much taken care of. Things are being contained. I mean, there's not enough damage going on here to prevent ships from using their full damage control capabilities. So things are getting under control. But it's starting to mount. We're getting a lot of damage going on, and even though, you know, these things can be contained, they're starting to mount up, and there's becoming an overwhelming amount of containments that are needed so far. And I think that's because of the range here. We're talking about 1,500 yards in some cases, like in the front there. I think it's either 1,200 or 1,500 yards away. Yeah, it's 1,200 yards between the Zuma and the Rosea. That's pretty close. No torpedoes. I think in the previous turn, 544, I think the Tokiwa did launch a torpedo on the Rurik, but it missed. There was torpedoes from the Adzuma, but I guess I was a little bit too afraid, more than I should have been, because they were only single torpedoes, traveling pretty slow, I think at 15 knots, and Russian ships are moving pretty quick, so they're easy to avoid. There was no problem. They had huge penalties to hit, so I learned a little lesson there. I was a little bit nervous about them, and I think the Japanese knew that. But it was really nothing to worry about. I think if you were closer, or if you were dead in the water, or really moving a lot slower, a single torpedo might be a threat. But I could see right away that in a moving battle like this, it's not really a threat. Udzuma's got a fire. One of its main battery magazines caught on fire. You can see that right there. Which was not contained. So it's still blazing away. Another turn, it'll be going. He'll probably flood the compartment and eliminate that. I think his main battery is down anyway from hitting the hoist damage. What else is going on here? The Rurik's been taking a heavy pounding. I know that, and that's coming from the Iwata pounding him. Let me see what's going on here with my notes. He's got some hull flooding, the Rurik. His forward torpedo mount is destroyed, which is no big issue for me. And he lost some of his secondary and light batteries. I think which ship here did take a big loss in its secondary batteries. I think it was the Tokiwa. Yeah, it's casemate secondary batteries. And its starboard side, I believe, lost 3 guns of its 5 mounts, actually. So that hurt. So it's been weakened substantially there. And it seems these ships in this age had a lot of secondary guns. We're talking 6-inch guns, things of that nature. And their main batteries, like the 8-inchers in this case, these are armored cruisers here. There's not many of them. So you're lucky if you do get hits with them. But when you do, I mean, it's like an 8-inch gun hitting you. Yeah, in one case, we did have the Rurik putting down some magazine hits on the Tokiwa as well, but it just could not penetrate the armor protecting the magazine. There were only 6-inch guns, and they just could, even at this range that you could see that they're at, I think it's like 550 yards between the Rurik and the Tokiwa. I mean, they're right on top of each other. No collisions yet, but they're that close, and the 6-inch guns could not penetrate the armor protecting the magazine, and it happened 3 times in a row that the Rurik hit the magazine of the Tokiwa and could not penetrate the armor. But I think it hit a 4th time and did take out a torpedo mount. So Tokiwa can no longer launch a torpedo to the fore. That's one good thing for the Russians that happened. Actually, I think the Russians are coming off pretty good, really. They got the Adzuma on fire. They got a small magazine fire there. The main battery's going to probably be out of action. They got flooding on the Adzuma. The Tokiwa lost its torpedo hull mount. There's a lot of hull flooding going on. But that, like I said, it's being contained pretty much. Grandma Boy took some damage as well. He had some hull flooding on the deck fire, but he contained that. But he does have a couple hull floodings going on that he did not contain, that he has to worry about. Other than that, he lost a searchlight. Oh well. And I think he lost one of his. I'm thinking the other ship. One of the ships lost its deck-mounted torpedo. I could be thinking of the Rurik. Yeah, it lost its forward deck-mounted torpedo, which I mentioned. So that's the situation, folks. I'm going to keep pounding on Idzuma. It's taking a lot of structural damage. It's got a fire going on in there. I think its forward battery is pretty much out of commission, at least for the next 3 turns. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's getting pretty tight and pretty close. Somebody's going to explode. I don't know. We'll see what happens, folks. I'll be back. Okay, folks, here we go. Just another 2 turns. We are at 05.53. What's going on here? You can see some burning wreckage there. Yes, something did in fact happen. Let me take a quick rundown of the ships and what's going on here. Idzuma finally lost its main battery, but it got blown off by the Rosea. But it really didn't matter because they flooded the magazine. It was useless anyway. So their main battery's totally gone from the game. For the battle, I should say. Adzuma took a funnel hit, so it's got smoke coming out all over the back of the ship. It's going to suffer penalties on its firing with its aft batteries. And it suffers -3 knots, so its speed is going to be maxed at like 17 knots for the rest of the game. So that's that. Oh, and its communications is out, so it'll be half fire as well for its forward main battery. So that'll last for 3 turns. Let me see. The Iwata in the rear there, you can see he's starting to change course there. Took a dramatic turn. I think it was this turn, in fact. He changed course to 110. So he went from 180 to 110. Pretty drastic. Suffered some penalties on his shooting. He has no damage whatsoever. The other ships haven't been firing on him. That's why. But I'm sure now that the Tokiwa is out of action, that will change. The Tokiwa was taking a lot of hits. It's been taking quite a few hits, in fact. But what did it in was the Rurik, I believe. Opened up pretty heavy on him. I think he hit him with his main guns, hit the magazine, penetrated the armor of the main magazine, and it exploded. So that was that. Right there and then. Tokiwa taken out of action. So he's done. That ship just exploded. And that's it for the Japanese. The Russians, my dudes. Rosea got a problem. It's taken a lot of structural hits. In fact, it's taken, I think, 7 structural hits, which means it suffers a penalty on the number of its damage control capacity. It's reduced to -1. So it's instead of 3, it's a 2. So basically, I can only attempt to control 2 things that are damaged in the control part of the turn. So that sucks. But so far, I've only taken hull flooding hits on me. What else? Oh yeah, another bad piece of news, of course, is my rudder is damaged. So I have to roll 10% every turn to have a chance of fixing that. Otherwise, my rudder's stuck in this position, so it's traveling at its current course, and it will not change. I think that's course 150. I have it written down, of course. Yeah, it's course 125, so I'm going to be stuck that way for a while, perhaps the rest of the game. That's my flagship. Woohoo! Let's see. The Rurik. Yeah, he's taken a beating too. He's up to 4 structural hits. He could take up to 6 before it affects his damage control capacity. His wireless is destroyed. His torpedo mount is destroyed. That happened a couple turns ago. Nothing big. He's got all his flooding under control. Everything seems to be functioning well. The Grandma Boy, let's see. What did it do here? Munitions room was damaged. That was from a previous turn. That's about it. The only thing else that happens, the Zuma did manage to control that fire. Yeah, he flooded the compartment. I said that already. So that was taken care of. There was, of course, an attempt by the Rurik to use their torpedo, launched one at really close range against the Kiwa, and just missed. So that whiffed. That's about it. So there's the big news right there. The Tokiwa has been taken out of action with a magazine hit from the Rurik. The Rurik is doing a pretty good job, actually. I didn't expect it to do much over there. I think it's traveling about 16 knots. So it's suffering penalties to hit. But it did manage to get some hits. So, okay, folks, we'll see what happens. Basically, I'm trying to get the Rurik on the other side of the Adzuma and the Idzuma. I don't know if it's going to help me, but I want to try and put more fire down on those two lead ships. I think kind of that's what the Japanese were thinking of doing with the Tokiwa and Iwata, but I don't know if things might change now. The Tokiwa's gone, but he's still got the Iwata, and that's heading behind the Rurik, so I don't know where he's going to go with that. He might try and track me down. He might try and pursue the Rurik, keep him occupied. I don't know, but I think I'm going to try and get that Rurik to put some fire down in the Adzuma. It seems to be taking a lot of damage. Yeah, I want to focus more on those two lead Japanese ships. Okay, folks, see you in the next couple turns. It's getting nasty.